Hello, welcome back to EDH Tutor. Today we're doing another deck tech, except I wanted to change it up a little bit and do a Pauper deck. So I'm pretty new to the format, but essentially what it is that you can only use commons to build your deck. So basically all that trash that you pull in your draft boosters when you get 10 or so of them, they're finally getting put to use. So I made a green Stompy deck, and it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 basic forest. And it's got an Ash Barrens, an Evolving Wilds, and a Terramorphic Expanse as the mana base. And then we're going to go into some of the duplicates, because in Pauper, unlike EDH, you can have multiple copies of a card. So you have 3 copies of Almighty Brushwag. So it's a 1 mana creature for a 1/1 with trample, and you can spend 4 mana to give it +3/+3. And we're gonna try and buff little small creatures like this to try and make them huge and stomp over our opponents. So we've got those 3. Then we've got some ramp here. We've got Leafkin Druid. So we're trying to get as many creatures out as possible, so Leafkin Druid will hopefully be tapping for 2 mana as opposed to that 1. But either way, 2 mana for a dork is not too bad. Then we've got some removal here. This is not in any particular order. Got 2 Ram Throughs. It's a pretty good removal from Ikoria. And probably multiple sets beforehand, but that's the version I got. But great removal, especially in a green Stompy deck where you're going to make your creatures big so they can kind of deal with any threat on the board. And speaking of dealing with any threat on the board, we've got Titanic Growth, which gives our creature +4/+4 until end of turn. We got 2 copies of that. And if we combo them together with an Almighty Brushwag, that could potentially end the life of our opponents very soon. But since we are going to have a bunch of creatures, stuff like Strength in Numbers is going to be pretty good in this deck. For 2 mana, we can give a creature upwards of +6/+6, which is better than Titanic Growth because this deck wants to churn out lots of creatures. But sometimes, if you run out of gas, you need card draw. So here comes Adventure Awaits. We've got 2 copies of that. Lets us kind of sift through our deck and get creatures. And then we have Track Down, another thing to let us just sift through, try and get some creatures out so we aren't just sitting at the board with a bunch of stuff like Titanic Growth in our hand with no creatures on board. And then we've got Growth Cycle. Got 2 copies of that. I'm going to start looking at 2 more copies because this card only gets better when you have a full set. And I will probably replace the Titanic Growth with them. But for now, I only have the 2. And then the crowning jewel of this deck, Jade Avenger. And this is one of my favorite cards for Modern Horizons 2. It has Bushido 2. And it's a 2/2. So whenever this creature becomes blocked or blocks, it gets +2/+2. So it's a great incentive for your opponents not to block, because in Pauper and a lot of 60 card formats, you're not going to have big boy creatures like in EDH. And then we've got some single card, just cards because we don't have multiple copies in the deck. So we got Bannerhide Cruciak. It's a 4/4 for 4 and has trample, and then it also has 2 different abilities that can be pretty good. And Voracious Typhoon, 4 mana, 4/4, can escape, so you can play it later. So if you're struggling on creatures, you can get that out. Arboreal Grazer is basically an exploration for 1 turn. Garrick's Gorehorn. We have 1 or 2 kind of big creatures in the deck, and this is one of them. And it's the stupid showcase art where they just, instead of going full art, they decided to just print it with no art, or not art, no flavor text, and nothing in the rules text. So it just looks kind of wonky. Then we got Bonder's Ornament. It can give us some card draw and some ramp. Big Play is a fantastic card. So it gives our creature reach, which is handy when you have no flyers in your deck, pretty much, and +2/+2, and a +1/+1 counter. So essentially +3, and then +1 for the rest of the game. Serolf's Packmate is a 3/3 for 4, and you can foretell it out, so you can get it out on turn 3 very easily, or even turn 1, and not get it out on turn 1, but get it out on turn 2 or 3. But yeah, very good card, and lets you draw a card. Field Trip, we have that for a card in our sideboard, but also for the ramp. Druid of the Cowl, that's a 2 mana dork. Nothing crazy. Aggressive Urge, we get a +1/+1 until end of turn, and then a card draw, so we can sift through our deck while also giving our creature a little bit of a boost. Just another 2/2, or 2 mana dork, except it also has a second ability, which ideally, if we can get our little creatures to big creatures, will be very good. I guess there is a second copy of Field Trip in here. Yeah, okay, so we have a second copy of Field Trip. I was wrong. So, second copy of Field Trip. Haze of Pollen. I like this card a lot because it's cycling ability, so you can just toss it into the graveyard for an extra card, or you can prevent all combat damage, because if you're in green, might as well throw in a fog effect. Wolfkin Bond, you get a body on the ground, and then you also get a buff for your creature permanently. We'll save that one later. Wild Size gives your creature +2/+2 and trample, and you draw a card, so it's kind of replacing itself. And then Ferris Band Tromper. So this creature gets bigger as he attacks, and then on your next turn, untap. So he's better in EDH by far, but I figured if we can get him through one turn, he's at least a 4/4 next turn, and he can slowly grow. And then the last creature is Ferris Band Thunderhoof. Now, I had these two together because, you know, Ferris Band. This one I think is a lot better because he's a great target to put Titanic Growth on, or Growth Cycle, whatever it happens to be, because anytime you do stuff like that, he gets 2 additional +1/+1 counters. So he is basically getting more buffed than any creature in the deck. And then when we move to sideboard, it has some other low to the ground creatures like Willow Dryad. That's not a low to the ground creature. Hardy Veteran, Ambush Viper, Naga Vitalis is another 2 mana dork. Uktabi Drake, and that might be the last one. Bayou Groff is technically low to the ground, but that additional cost will get you anytime. Then Guardian Gladewalker. Then we have a few more single target buffs, like Snakeskin Veil, which can give our creature hexproof and a +1/+1 counter. We've got Mammoth Growth, which is like Titanic Growth, except worse, but can be foretold. And we've got another Haze here, or not Haze, but Fog Effect. Charge Through is just gives a creature trample and draws a card. And then we've got Introduction to Prophecy, which is here because then we can fetch it out of our sideboard with Field Trip. So we can get to scry 2 and draw a card. Not the best rate, but good when you're in green. And then Vigor Spore Worm, 6 mana for another buff effect. And Vine Mare. It is in the sideboard because if there's a black deck, then might as well throw this in. And then Orchard Strider. Now this is in here because some decks take a Drainy effect, and that extra 6 life honestly might save us. So that's the deck right now, and It's not perfect. There's still changes I want to make, and I think Pauper's a great format because the cards are so cheap because they're typically just commons. You know, there are a few uncommons that are legal in Pauper, but for the most part, it's just a bunch of commons, um, which makes it really good for people coming into the format because you don't have to spend hundreds of dollars on an EDH deck because you want to actually hang at the table, you know. But it's a great format, and I'm going to be playing that with my friends soon. But yeah, let me know what changes I need to make to the deck before I actually play test it. I'm very hyped too. Just let me know what you think. Thank you.